Hi there. So today we've got a bread recipe. So we're sharing some simple recipes on our channel. It's the Good Life channel, and good quality bread is part of a good life. We're going to share this today. This recipe is quite a new one for us. We've only been doing it a few weeks. The big key advantage of this one is that it's a no-knead bread recipe. So really good for disabled people, arthritic people, people that can't knead bread or don't have time to knead bread. So let me show you how it goes. So it's basically a simple recipe. For this, I'm just using regular all-purpose flour. You could, of course, use bread flour. You could use wholemeal flour. Oops, there's the scoop. You could use whatever type of flour you prefer. We're going for 400 grams or thereabouts. Don't need to be too precise, but need to at least get to 400. There we go. So it's 400 grams of plain flour. We like our bread to have a bit of salt in it, so we're going to go for a teaspoon and a bit of salt. So there's one, and there's a little bit more. So that's just Himalayan pink salt. And simple enough, spatula is all you need here, just to mix that salt in to the flour, disperse it about a bit in there, as so. Right, there we go. Right then. Now we just need yeast and water. Yeast, water and flour with a bit of salt. So I'm just going to reset the scales. So 400 grams of plain flour in this occasion. Any type of flour will do. And it's going to seem like a lot of water. Anyone that's made bread before, we're going for 300 grams of water. 300 ml, 300 grams. Okay, and then some yeast. So normally for this amount of flour, you would use about a teaspoonful of yeast. But on this occasion, we're going for about half a teaspoonful because we want this to rise slowly. So I'm just going to disperse that there on the water. Cool. Okay, keeping the yeast and the salt away from each other is always a good idea. Okay, so the yeast is now just rehydrating on the water there. So I'm just going to gently mix it back in and bring it all together. And you can see here, we can use the spatula for this. And just bringing it all together. So we're not mixing it a huge amount, we're just mixing it to the point where the flour and water are all combined and we have no particularly dry bits. Almost there. And this is where it's going to seem really odd to those of you that have made bread before, but that is pretty much it. Just got a bit of flour to scoop in right down to the very bottom there, to the underneath. You can see there how this has now pretty much all come together. Okay, and that is it. So we now have all of the flour mixed with all of the water. Okay, so that's that. This now sits for about 12 hours or so. Depends how warm the room is. Let me show you one I've done already. So this one we actually did about 24 hours ago. So I'm just going to use that lid to go onto the one I've just mixed together. So in about 12 to 24 hours, this one here will be ready to go. If you wanted it to be sooner, what you do there is use some warmer water to mix with it, and then it would obviously rise sooner. So we get the no knead part of this because we're giving the yeast time to stretch the gluten in the flour. We're giving it time to happen. So if you want a quicker bread, obviously you have to knead it yourself with your hands. To stretch the gluten, we can use time instead of using kneading to do that. So you can see here, this one, just about to bring it out of the bowl, and you'll be able to see how stringy it is and how this has almost as if it's been kneaded, and it's kneaded itself effectively over the last 24 hours. And, you know, I've been making bread for years. This seemed really alien to me the first time I did it. But there you go. It's an incredibly wet dough mix. So what we're going to do is use plenty of flour here. And we're going to try and bring this together. And then we're going to put it back into that bowl on a greaseproof or a non-stick piece of sheeting in our case. So I'm just going to pop that in there. Okay, so to bring this together then, you can wet your hands, you can cover your hands in flour, you can cover your hands in oil. There's all sorts of methods here. I'm just going to use my scrape to help me to just bring this together. There we go. You can see I'm getting some flour on the outside, not messing about too much, just bringing it together, folding it over, and you can see now how I'm knocking the air that had formed in it over the last 24 hours. I'm knocking some of that out of it. It's losing a lot of its volume, and there we go. I have formed a wet but a nice dough. Okay, so ours is in there, and that will now rise for another hour, and at the end of that hour it will have puffed up a little bit more, got a little bit more life in it, and we'll cut to that next bit next, and we'll show you how to bake it. Right then, so the bread's been rising for about an hour. It's actually been a little over an hour because it's quite a cold day today. In the summer it would be more like an hour, and it's ready to put in the oven. So let me just show you what we've got in the oven. The oven's on the hottest temperature it will go on, and it's been preheating for 15 minutes. I have in here a baking stone with a casserole type dish. So this is remarkably hot. Okay, so ideally, if you've got one of those big ceramic casserole pots, whatever, they're much heavier, much bigger, they're going to hold much more heat than this. But this is the best we've got, so it will do. Right then, so this is why we put it in a baking sheet, or in our case, a non-stick sheet. The bread will just go straight into there, stay there, and I'll put the lid back on it. And it will cook with the lid on for half an hour. So it's effectively, it's a really wet dough, so it's going to steam itself in there for the next half an hour. Let's pop that in. And we've got a baking stone in there. The baking stone, obviously, it's nice and hot. So that's as good as we've got. If I had a big, heavy ceramic pot, then that would be great. So half an hour on the timer, leaving the temperature up as high as it will possibly go. Gas mark 9 for us, and we'll come back in half an hour. I'll take the lid off, and then I'll bake it for a further 25 minutes to a half an hour with the lid off, and then the bread will be done. We'll show you the end result. Right then, so the bread's had 30 minutes with the lid on, and it's had a further 20 minutes with the lid off, and we're just going to take a quick look, and I've already had a sonic peek, and that looks well done. So all of that on the highest temperature setting that we've got. So we should now just be able to lift it out on the baking parchment, and you can see there that that is very well cooked. The underneath is dry, and we're done. So that's how we can make bread without any kneading, and it's a very simple recipe. Please share that with as many people as you can, and I think it's a really good recipe. Anyone can now make bread. Thanks for watching.